What's up, everybody? Welcome to BioS3 Raw TV. I'm going to leave this thing all open to hear what you guys say at the end of this video. Watch the whole video at the end. Down below in the comment section, I'm actually going to come back and check this video because I want to see what you guys have to say. And that is the topic of this video. You read the title, so you knew what it was when you clicked on it. Who is the greatest bodybuilder of all time? All time. This is going to be a hot debate. People are going to argue because they have their favorites, and they're going to argue left and right about Ronnie. Ronnie is the best of all time, right? You're going to come up, some people will say Dorian. Dorian is the best of all time. Jay is the best of all time. Arnold is the best of all time. You know, I don't think they go as far as like Larry Scott and those guys, but you're going to say stuff like, you know, I mean, of course, Lee Haney is the best of all time. Well, let's break this down. What would make someone the best of all time? Here's the problem. In all of the eras, there's different bodybuilders. So that means whoever's winning the Olympia may have won then, but might not win now. They might not win now, but they may have won then. So really, it's kind of hard unless you literally got everybody in their prime with what they consider their best physique, lined them all up on stage, and then kind of compared them and did a contest of the greats would be the only way. You can't even do it online with the pictures because pictures, what you see in pictures is not what you see in person. Like, I know that for a fact. Like, I see it when I'm sitting at the judging table. It's very hard to judge a show by a video or a picture. It's almost impossible. I mean, there are definitely videos and stuff where you can clearly see this person, which was much more conditioned. So why the fuck did they lose to this person? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I get it. There's so many variables. But here's the deal. Who has the greatest physique of all time? Like, the most complete physique, hands down, everything that bodybuilding should be about. Let's take, I mean, because I think we're going to start probably with Arnold because he had won the 7 Olympias. Yeah, I think he was like the first one to really win multiple Olympias like that, right? So Arnold was, hands down, nobody had ever seen anything like him. He came out, he was charismatic, he was tall, which for a bodybuilder, that was a little different, right? Him and Lou Ferrigno were both tall. But he had these muscle bellies. He had these like swelling muscle bellies, and he had great symmetry, and like he would hit his poses and like twist his hips in the front double bicep. You know, he would hit these arm poses with the, you know, the arm out like this, like he'd have one arm out like this, and they'd hit the fucking poses, and it was different, right? And that's what set him apart. Like, he was so much different than everyone else. Bigger, leaner, like, you know, well, Frank Zane was leaner, but regardless, he had this very complete physique, and many people would say like his legs were lacking, but I mean, back then, legs, you know, Tom Platz, until he came around, nobody was really like, had these fucking gigantic legs that were cross-striated and fucking had feathering and shit, and back then the hamstrings weren't even a fucking thought, and glutes were like so far in the rearview mirror, you couldn't even see them with the trunks. So for that era, overall, Arnold was the best, right? So then we come up to the next individual who was winning multiple Olympias like that, and we had Dorian Yates, 6-time Mr. Olympia. So Arnold was 7, Dorian was 6, 6-time Mr. Olympia. And when Dorian stepped in there was nothing, I would say, lacking on Dorian's body, but his physique didn't have the best arm development as far as size. So, I mean, he had this wide back, thick back. His chest was thick and striated, traps. He was very rugged looking. Not like Arnold, but rugged looking. Like, you could tell that he could move some fucking weight, right? Density, you know, he hit his poses in these very hardcore, like, you know, he invented that back pose that every single fucking bodybuilder does nowadays, where you turn to the back, spike your calf, hit your hamstring, hit your glutes, then pull your arms back like you do in a row, and then hit your back lat spread from the back like that. You know, he was the one that first hit the arms down, raises them up, then hits his rear double bicep. He was doing things that were showing detail in his back and stuff that nobody else was really doing at the time. And now everybody's followed suit and fucking everybody does it. So I'd say that he kind of definitely changed the face of bodybuilding, changed the scope as far as ushering in a new era of size, as well as grainy conditioning that we really had. I mean, Frank Zane got really grainy and conditioned before, but actually, you know, didn't have that mass like that. Dorian had the mass and conditioning. You know, my personal opinion is his arms could have been a little bit bigger, and I think that was just due to his genetics. Like, they just wouldn't grow any bigger than they were. I mean, let's face facts. He did everything he could, and he didn't have like the 25s or the 24s or whatever Dorian, whatever Ronnie and Jay and those guys had. His arms just never were that big, but it didn't matter because the physique flowed well together, and you didn't like automatically look at his arms. You had to really nitpick to see his arms. Before Dorian, actually, no, you know what? I'm sorry. It wasn't Dorian, was the next one. Lee Haney was before Dorian. So you had Arnold, then Lee Haney, who tied Arnold, then beat Arnold's record with one more, 8 wins. Lee Haney came out, the small, what they call wasp waist. I don't even know if that fucking term's used anymore. The small wasp waist. He had the sweeping quads. He was in the gym training heavy, right? He was doing some heavy, hard fucking training. Him and Gaspari were in there, their training partners. They had like the do-rags on and fucking string tank tops and spandex. They went in there looking like they were fucking getting ready to go in a pro wrestling ring and fucking do some work, but they completely changed the scope of the sport again. Those guys in that era. But Lee Haney was the one that when he walked in, to me, very complete, top to bottom, conditioned, big, very complete class. He hit the poses, like everything. Like I honestly, if I really looked at Lee Haney, I couldn't really find a flaw in his physique. There were a couple times where conditioning could have been better, but across the board, everybody's conditioning could have been better, except for Gaspari. He was the only one that had, he was the first one ushering in those striated glutes, but you know, he didn't have the same flow, the same thickness, the same fullness. So Lee was able to edge out all those other guys, and some of them just fucking wipe the mat with them. You know what I mean? Literally just kill them and fucking get rid of them. But we had Lee Haney, then Dorian Yates. And then after Dorian retired, everybody thought Flex Wheeler was heir apparent. And it looked like Flex is going to be the next Mr. Olympia. Enter Ronnie Coleman, right? Ronnie Coleman, a whole new fucking animal. We never saw anything like Arnold. We never saw anything like Lee Haney. We never saw anything like Dorian. We never really saw anything like fucking Ronnie. And to this day, we still haven't seen anything like Ronnie. Like, there's nobody even in the scope of what Ronnie did that is even close to being like, wow, the wow factor that Ronnie had. So Ronnie comes in, and now he had body parts that if his conditioning wasn't as good, he wouldn't have been Ronnie. Period. Yes, he was big. Yes, he was strong, but his conditioning for that size is really what made Ronnie Coleman Ronnie Coleman. When he turned around and hit that back double bicep, his back was there. His lower back was there. But those fucking glutes, like, they started at his lower back and they extended halfway down his fucking hamstrings. It was really like a fucking racehorse. He looked like a fucking Clydesdale or a fucking black stallion with those fucking hamstrings and shit. You were like, what the fuck, dude? Like, it was just so unrealistic looking that it looked like Ronnie was birthed on Mars or something, right? And then fucking flown here to show humans what the fuck could be done with genetic engineering. That's what Ronnie looked like. He took Dorian and Flex Wheeler and mashed the physiques together and came out with a symmetrical, flowing, hard, full, huge, grainy physique. Ronnie, hands down, redefined, and I honestly don't think there'll ever be anybody ever again. Honestly, I really don't like Ronnie. I think he pushed the human body to the limits of what could be carried, conditioning, even the strength portion. I think he pushed the physique, the human body to the limits. I really don't think that we're going to see someone else come along in our lifetime, honestly, that's even remotely like Ronnie. But, you know, who knows? So after Ronnie, we had the next one who was winning 7 Olympias. We have, now don't get me wrong, we have Jay who won 4, Jay Cutler. We have all these other guys who won multiple Olympias, but these guys were trying to break each other's records. And, you know, Dorian with the least amount of was 6, which is 2 more than Jay. You know, like Frank Zane that had 3 Olympias. But the guys that were really changing the scope of things, winning these record-setting, you know, Olympia reigns, Phil Heath. We had Phil come out. And Phil was an animal we had never seen. Not size-wise, but as far as the way his physique flowed, in the fucking 3D effect that his physique had, which is 100% genetic. That's why they call him the Gifd, because he's been gifted these genetics, but you need to work with the genetics. You can't just fucking have the genetics and rely on that, because we've seen that before, and it doesn't really work out very well for a lot of people. There's plenty of guys with great genetics out there, and they slack off and they're fucked. We had Phil Heath come out, turn around to the back, and just when we thought Ronnie Coleman's back was like the most fucking sickest thing, now Phil Heath has this rear double bicep that you're like, what the fuck? He has muscles in places that people don't have places. So what the fuck? Like, it just was, again, one of those things where you saw him start out and he wasn't even creeping up to the top. He was on a fucking meteoric shot to the fucking top to become the next Olympia champion after Ronnie Coleman. So now you have Phil with 7, Ronnie with 8, Dorian with 6, Haney with 8, and Arnold with 7. Now, you would have to take all of those guys in their prime, stand them next to each other, hit the poses, pose for pose, let them be scored, and see where the scores fall. Everybody's going to have their opinion, but nobody really knows what these guys look like standing next to each other. And everybody that they beat were different people. So, well, actually, that's not true. Like, some of the people were still in there with Ronnie and Dorian, and Lee Haney to Dorian, some of the people that were left there. Like, but eventually, it became new pockets of competitors coming in, and those guys beating new competitors. So they would never even compete against the other guys, right? So now we boil it down to who is the greatest of all time. Now, I'm going to have to give my personal opinion, And I know people are going to get pissed because people always get pissed. Doesn't matter. I could say fucking ice cream is awesome and people are like, fuck you, Jerry, ice cream sucks. Like, it doesn't matter what I say, people are going to get pissed. But my personal opinion, I think the greatest Olympia of all time, who had the most complete top to bottom physique and the most wins, Lee Haney. I believe it's Lee Haney, my personal opinion. I believe that Ronnie, he was so big that it got to the point where by the time he hit his 8th Olympia, you know, in my eyes, his body was starting to look pretty distorted. And I've seen him in person. I've seen him on stage. I've seen him guest posing. He just had this like transformation that his physique wasn't getting better. It was just getting bigger. And to me, that's not bodybuilding. Lee Haney never got to the point where his body went backwards. And I think that, you know, Ronnie coming back that last time where he didn't win and Jay beat him, showed that he was going backwards, and there was really nothing he could do to stop that. You know, Father Time had caught up to him, the training had caught up to him. And I do feel like Lee Haney, although Dorian had ushered in, you know, a whole new era, I believe that Lee Haney knew that if he had pushed himself any further, he wasn't going to get any better. He knew that he was going to go backwards, and that he probably wasn't going to beat Dorian because Dorian was coming up. He was getting better. And by the time Dorian was done, his stomach was bloated. He was, you know, he had torn the bicep. You know, by the time Arnold was done, it wasn't necessarily his best look. I think his best look was the 6th Olympia that he won, I believe. There was one year he would look just fantastic. You were like, holy shit. I think his last Olympia was the one that, you know, wasn't necessarily his best showing. And then Phil Heath. I don't believe, honestly, that we've seen the best Phil Heath yet. Honestly, I don't. I think that Phil has something left in the tank. I have spoken to him recently. He is a friend of mine. You guys know that. You know, it'd be very easy for me to pick my friend, right? And be like, hey, my friend is the best of all time. But I'm being honest here. I do believe that Lee Haney, like Phil's way more shredded. He's more dense. But I believe that Haney's flow, and they're about the same size. Haney had this specific flow to his physique, and he's won 8 Olympias. So you can't say, you know, that Phil couldn't beat Haney. I do believe that Phil could beat Haney. I believe that Haney could beat Phil. I believe Phil could beat Ronnie. I believe Ronnie could beat Phil. I believe Dorian could beat all of them. I believe they can all beat Dorian on any given day. But if I had to choose the guy that seemingly never slipped up on stage, always came in better condition, improved year after year, which is really what bodybuilding is about. It's not about having one good showing in one year and having 10 good bad showings or 2 bad showings, then having a good one. He was so consistent, Haney. He was consistent all the way through, kept improving. And when he knew he wasn't going to improve, he retired. He was out. Every one of the other Olympians have pushed themselves to a point where they started to go backwards. And I think that the Mr. Olympians, not Olympians, the Olympians, the Mr. Olympians have pushed themselves so they started to go backwards. And I believe that if you're going to be the overall best ever champ, you know when it's time to quit, so you have your best as your final showing. Your final showing should be your absolute best. Lee Haney's best showing, in my personal opinion, was his final showing against Dorian. Every other one of those Mr. Olympias, their final showing, they dropped placings, they didn't win, or they retired knowing that they beat the other guys, but they weren't at their best. Right? But Haney was at their best. So that's why I'm basing it. I'm not saying that I like one more guy than the other. I'm not saying I've even compared their physiques as far as like who could beat who, because we don't fucking know. But I do know that as far as Mr. Olympias go, absolutely Lee Haney year after year started to improve, kept improving, hit 7 straight, or Lee Haney hit 8 straight Olympias. And even in that last one, he beat Dorian. I believe that was his best. And that's why I choose Lee Haney. I must say Dorian. Lee Haney is the best ever Mr. Olympia. And I know a lot of people are going to have, you know, things to say about that and things, you know, not going to agree. I get it. Everybody's got their favorite. But I'm trying to take emotion out of it. Like I said, it's very easy for me to say Phil and Jay are the 2 greatest of all time because they're friends of mine. But if I'm going to be realistic with you guys, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to take the emotional attachment out of it. Haney did what Mr. Olympia is supposed to do. They're supposed to dominate until they retire and then walk away the champ. And that's exactly what Haney did. So in my eyes, Haney, greatest of all time. Let me know below what you guys think. I'm really interested to hear. And don't just type Lee Haney or Phil Heath or whatever. Put some shit in there. You know what? Matter of fact, if you guys get cameras and you want to do a fucking YouTube thing, put it up on YouTube. You know, like put it up. Let's see what you guys think. You know, state your case. Fight your case like I just did. Let's get it going. I'd really be interested to hear it because this is something that's never going to die. Everybody's going to have an opinion. It's going to go on for probably the fucking rest of the time until the fucking world extinguishes fucking its light and disappears. But when you really boil it down to it, why would somebody be considered the best? Because they dominated the whole time they were there. They went out on top, and they never went backwards. Lee Haney. BicepTraining@gmail.com. Leave comments down below, but don't fight. www.biceptraining.com is the blog. It's the Lee Haney Bicep. Let's get the bicep there. There it is. Lee Haney Bicep, and we are out.